Yo, champs in the making, it's your boy Starmeistr and Luap, aka the Pichu Bros, and welcome to another episode of the Pokemon Chronicles review series. Today, we'll be reviewing Episode 8, Showdown at the Oak Corral. The episode originally aired on January 14th, 2003 in Japan and on June 24th, 2006 in the US. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started on the recap. The episode takes place in Professor Oak's laboratory where the Pokemon are just chilling and doing their normal routines, not knowing that someone has already infiltrated the place, that someone being Cassidy and Brick. In typical Team Rocket fashion, they plan on stealing all the Pokemon that reside in the lab. Meanwhile, after feeding the Pokemon, Tracy hears the doorbell ringing and goes in to check who it is, and it turns out to be everyone's favorite Magikarp salesman, who is trying to sell Tracy a Magikarp. Tracy declines the offer as Professor Oak approaches the scene in anger. The salesman quickly leaves, and Professor Oak tells that it's wrong to buy and sell Pokemon. A second after, the doorbell rings again, and thinking it's a Magikarp salesman again, Tracy says that he's gonna teach him a lesson. But it's actually just Delia and Mimey, who brought cookies for snacks. In another scene, Bulbasaur is happily walking around the forest and comes across a Nidoqueen and Golem, who we thought were Gary's Pokemon, but are actually Cassidy and Bill in disguise. Bulbasaur just ignores them and continues on with his life. The next Pokemon they come across is Totodile. Whether he figured out their disguises or just wanted to play, Totodile hit both of them with Water Gun, causing Team Rocket to use their own version of Mirror Coat, knocking him out. Then, as Cyndaquil is peacefully sleeping, Cassidy accidentally steps on it, provoking the Fiery Mouse to spout a big fire. But Burp uses a fire extinguisher to put out the flame on the poor guy's back. Bulbasaur and Oddish notice this and try to inform Professor Oak about the commotion. He's busy though, so the trio goes to Noctowl instead for it to scour the area. They then drag Tracy out of his job to help them, as Noctowl uses its X-ray vision to find out that Team Rocket are behind the Nidoqueen and Golem costumes and hurriedly informs the gang about it. Cassidy and Buzz manage to infiltrate the inside of the lab as Professor Oak asks Delia to stay for dinner. OMG, Elder shipping confirmed?
Tracy and the Pokemon finally inform Professor Oak about the break-in, but as soon as they check the Pokeball storage, everything is gone. Professor Oak speculates that Team Rocket must be behind all of this, but Tracy adds that the Team Rocket he knows couldn't pull a heist this smoothly without messing it up, so they conclude that perhaps Team Rocket hired some specialists to do the job. Tracy then tells Bayleaf, Oddish, Bulbasaur, Cyndaquil, and Noctowl to spread the word to everyone about the robbery. As Cassidy and Bob try to get away, still wearing their disguises, a Nidoking suddenly appears and starts hugging Cassidy, thinking she's a real Nidoqueen. As soon as they get away from the Nidoking, a Muk then hugs the Muk costume that they used to hide the Pokeballs in. On the other hand, we're shown that Noctowl discovers Team Rocket's helicopter, but Cassidy and Clutch are trapped by Muk before they could even get into their getaway vehicle. Totodile appears out of nowhere and fires a water gun, which allows Team Rocket to escape from Muk's hold. Totodile proceeds to tell Oak and Delia the location of the thieves, and as Cassidy and Hutch reach the helicopter, they find themselves trapped by basically everyone living in Professor Oak's lab. They recite their iconic motto, as Professor Oak lectures them that it's bad to steal Pokemon. They engage in a battle with Houndour and Hitmontop against Bulbasaur, Scyther, and Mr. Mime. Team Rocket are easily defeated with Cyndaquil burning them a flamethrower, and Bulbasaur unleashing a powerful Solar Beam. Totodile lands the finishing blow and blasts off Team Rocket again. They manage to gather all the Pokeballs back, and the episode ends with Professor Oak reciting a poem and the narrator uttering these final words.
And Miss Ketchum felt for sure that Professor Oak's love poem was about her, but
Elder shipping is officially confirmed, boys. And now for our ratings and reviews.
It's actually pretty difficult to review this episode given the limited dialogue we got, but I feel confident with giving this episode a rating of 6 out of 10. I think it's decent. It was cool to get an episode featuring the everyday lives of the people and Pokemon living in Professor Oak's lab. As boring as it may look, I think it's wholesome to see Professor Oak doing some mundane research stuff and Tracy fitting the Pokemon entrusted to them. This episode had its own charm of pretty much being a slice of life episode. And for those wondering what Delia does when she's bored, now you know. It's cute how the Magikarp salesman made a cameo in this episode, like how did he even get to this place? But as irrelevant as this cameo may seem, it's actually a good setup for the bigger picture, since Professor Oak gives a sermon that it's wrong to treat Pokemon as marketable products, and this is basically what Team Rocket does. Speaking of Team Rocket, Cassidy and Mitch are super funny all throughout the episode. These two were comedy gold, and people mistakenly calling Butch the wrong name will never get old. I'm glad the writers chose these two to be the villains of this episode. I couldn't have asked for better villains. Tracy was still the wholesome character that he is. I wish they gave him a bit more character building like they did with Brock and Misty, but hey, this episode wasn't about him. It's about the entire lab, so I guess it's fine. I'm just happy that we got an episode where he's the main protagonist, and oh my gosh, did they just confirm Oak and Delia? But besides that, it was awesome to see these two battling alongside Bulbasaur and Mr. Mime. Regarding the Pokemon, I love that this episode gave them a lot of focus, with Bulbasaur showcasing his leader duties, especially with the way he walks around the lab like he's a school principal supervising over the children or something. Bayleaf didn't do much, but it's nice to know that she became Tracy's assistant and distributing the Pokemon food. Cyndaquil was, as usual, a wholesome creature that you can't help empathizing with after what Team Rocket did to him. Noctowl again was a good utility and a big help in saving the day. And of course, Totodile just steals the show every time he's on screen. He was the first one to actively foil Team Rocket and was a very Pokemon to blast them off. He's such an awesome plot initiator and plot clincher, not to mention his multiple cute scenes sprinkled around the episode. But overall though, I felt like nothing really happened in this episode. It didn't have that many negative points, but the good points weren't strong either. The pros definitely outweigh the cons, but overall it's just above average for me, which is why I gave it a 6 out of 10.
What a boring slice of life episode this was, which is perfectly right up my alley. I really enjoyed this episode as it really gave a look into what goes down at the Oak Lab while Ash is away on his travels. I give this episode a 7 out of 10 because I genuinely enjoyed it. However, I will say that I did enjoy the Misty episode slightly more. Continuity wise, it's cool that this episode along with the previous episodes are all taking place simultaneously at more or less the same time. Delia mentions how Ash just reached Petalburg Woods before she went to visit Oak's lab for adult matters. It was also cute that she wanted Ash to have caught a Zigzagoon because she always wanted to see one, and you know what? Me too, Delia. It was so good to see all the Pokemon in the lab interacting and living their lives, and the Chad Bulbasaur just taking care of business as he always does. Totodile was great as he always was, again having a big part in setting up the plot for this episode. Easily the best part of this episode was Cassidy and Biff. They're just so funny and I love their inclusion into the story. When we watched this episode, it was like 1 week before they got confirmed to be coming back in Pokemon Journeys, and while they did come back, their return was kind of lackluster sadly. Luckily, we will be seeing them again in Pokemon Chronicles though. I like that when they snuck into the lab, they wore a Golem and Nidoqueen costume, which are Pokemon that belong to Gary, so it actually made for a good disguise. In fact, Gary used both of these Pokemon in his top 16 battle against Ash. They were taken down in easy fashion as always, but they did prove to be a slightly more efficient than the trio themselves, and that's cool because I do think that they're better in terms of being Team Rocket members, but of course just not as characters. Finally, this episode gave us a lot of elder shipping moments, which although is not my cup of tea, is something that might as well be canon at this point. Ash and Gary will be step cousins at some point, or whatever weird family dynamic that will be. One thing that they did too much of was using the transition. Like seriously, it was used over 10 times during this episode. I like the shot with Tauros completely miscolored in the back. I found that immediately while watching and I don't know if I wanted to include it in my review. And hey, the last thing I'll say is that it was cool to see the Magikarp salesman once again. A really random appearance, but a welcome one nonetheless, which was also brought back in Journeys after we watched this episode. Overall, quite an enjoyable episode that started off slow and had great comedic moments and cool sequences.
So yeah, that was our review and recap for episode 8 of Pokemon Chronicles Showdown at the Oak Corral. If you enjoyed this video, then I highly suggest you subscribe to both our channels. Links are found in the description below. For the next episode of this review series, that will come out next week on Luap's channel, so you're gonna wanna head over to this channel to check that out. Or, if you want, you can click the playlist that we made and find all the episodes neatly there. Until next time, thanks for watching, and the Pichu Bros will gotta catch ya later.
Something tells me this was Team Rocket's work.
The Team Rocket I know couldn't pull off a heist like this without messing something up.